Okay, the sermon this morning begins with a reading from Valtorta's Poem of the Man-God, Volume 4. Begins on page 650. And Jesus is speaking in a somewhat admonishing tone to the Pharisees. And they say, "Are we among the blind people as well?" Jesus says, "If you were and you tried to see, you would not be guilty. But it is because you say, 'We see,' and then you do not want to see, that you commit sin. Your sin persists because you do not try to see, although you are blind. And what have we to see? The way, the truth, and the life. A man born blind, as this young man was, with the help of his stick, can always find the door of his house and move about it, because he knows his house. But if he were taken to a different place, he would not be able to go in by the door of the new house, because he would not know where it is, and he would bump against the walls. The time of the new law has come. Everything is renewed, and a new world, a new people, a new kingdom are arising. Now the people of the past do not know all this. They know their times. They are like blind people taken to a new town where the regal house of the Father is, but they do not know its location. I have come to lead them there and take them into it, that they may see. I am the door through which one enters the paternal house, in the kingdom of God, in the light, in the way, in the truth, in the life. And I am also the one who has come to gather the flock left without a guide, and lead it to one only sheepfold, the Father's. I know the door of the fold, because I am the door and shepherd. And I go in and come out as when I like. And I go in freely and by the door, because I am the true shepherd. When a man comes to give the sheep of God other instructions, and tries to mislead them, taking them to other abodes and other ways, he is not the good shepherd, but an idle shepherd. Likewise, he who does not go in by the door of the fold, but tries to enter in a different way, jumping over the enclosure, is not the shepherd, but a thief and an assassin, who goes in to kill and steal, so that the stolen lambs, with their wailing voices, may not draw the attention of the watchman and of the shepherd. False shepherds are trying to insinuate themselves also among the sheep of the flock of Israel, to lead them astray from the pastures, far from the true shepherd. And they go in ready to tear them from the flock, even by means of violence, and if necessary, they are also willing to kill them and strike them in many ways, so that they may not speak, informing the shepherd of the tricks of the false shepherds, or they may cry to God, or to protect them from their enemies and the enemies of the shepherd. I am the good shepherd, and my sheep know me, and those who have been forever the watchmen of the true fold know me. They have known me in my name, and they mention it to make it known to Israel. And they described me and prepared my ways, and when my voice was heard, the last of them opened the door to me, saying to the flock, awaiting the true shepherd, the flock gather round his crook. And he's quoting John the Baptist. He says, "Now here is the one who I said would follow me, one who precedes me because he was before me. And I did not know him, but for him, that you may be ready to receive him, I have come to baptize with water, that he may be revealed to Israel. And the good shepherd heard my voice, and when I called them by their names, they came to me, and I took them with me, as a good shepherd does when he is known to the sheep that recognize his voice, and follow him wherever he goes. And when he has let them all out, he walks in front of them, and they follow him because they love the voice of the shepherd. But they do not follow a stranger. On the contrary, they run away from him, because they do not know him, and they are afraid of him. I also walk ahead of my sheep to point out the road to them, and be the first to face dangers, and show them to the flock, that I want to lead them to safety in my kingdom." And they reply, "Is Israel no longer the kingdom of God? Israel is the place from which the people of God must rise to the true Jerusalem and to the kingdom of God." And what about the promised Messiah, that Messiah that you say you are? Is he not to make Israel triumphant, glorious, and master of the world, subjecting to his scepter all the people and revenging himself? Oh, revenging himself cruelly on all those who subjugated it since it was a people? So nothing of all that is true? Are you denying the prophets? Are you saying that our rabbis are stupid? The kingdom of the Messiah is not of this world. It is the kingdom of God based on love. There's nothing else. And the Messiah is not the king of peoples and armies, but the king of spirits. The Messiah will come from the chosen people, from the royal stock, and above all from God, who generated him and sent him. The foundation of the kingdom of God, the promulgation of the law of love, the announcement of the good news mentioned by the prophet, began from the people of Israel. But the Messiah will be the king of the world, the King of kings, and his kingdom will have no limit or boundary, neither in time nor in space. Open your eyes and accept this truth. You may be familiar with certain societies that develop and people are imprisoned. Because of the lack of freedom, the people are not free to do what we are free to do here on the outside. They are constantly under watch by the guards. And so these societies and these rules exist. One of the classic rules is that you're never to snitch on somebody else, which is a very strange rule because it's a rule that says don't tell the truth, because telling the truth is a betrayal to your people. And through the work that I did in working with prisoners, I came to hear some of the way that this system works, how you operate in prison when you are under this oppressive authority. And the rules are all twisted, and they're all weird, and somehow they exist in an environment that's mostly driven by fear and the desire for power and the need for respect, and if respect is not given, then people are physically, beat down. So it's not a society where you can really relax very easily. On the outside, we have a similar thing going on. We have a lot more freedom. But we have governments that are not based in love. We have governments that are hungry for power, control. They're fearful constantly about who might be trying to overthrow them. And we have a world now where there is an energy of terror. There's a terrorist movement on this earth. How does that happen? Well, that sort of energy can cultivate where there is no light, where there is no God. Now, in reality, there is plenty of light and plenty of God. But if people are not taught and are not nurtured into the truth, then these other systems begin to develop, because we as human beings, we have needs. We have needs to be safe and to be fed and to be accepted and to have purpose. And if God is taken away from that, everybody now must find a way to get those things for themselves, as opposed to the way that the society was created to be, which was to live in community, to honor the globe that has been given to us, and to realize that through cooperation and through lack of greed and through learning selflessness, it would be relatively easy for this planet to be peaceful. I mean, you ever go to the supermarket and go like, wow, there's a lot of food here. And think that every person on the planet is needing to eat a certain amount every day. And somehow, there is enough food. It may not be distributed correctly, but in this country, we don't have to think too much about it. When you are awakening and desiring to live under the authority of God, you are much like a blind man or woman who has, with their cane, become familiar to the environment in which we live, this environment of oppression and governmental authorities that are fear-driven and that are power-hungry. And so we have all figured out ways how to carve out our niche of safety and security and whatever degree of wealth we have learned to manifest. And Jesus is being pretty intense on these guys, because they are saying, no, we want what you have. But he knows that they don't, and they have not surrendered themselves in humility to recognize that they are very attached, if not perpetuating, this system of authority. And what you heard this morning and how Naomi shared, that is the sign of somebody who truly has surrendered, because aspects of their life begin to fall apart. Because the structures that we formed under this oppressive way of living without the awareness of God, they have to crumble in order that we may be released and we may now enter into this realm of love and light. And the sign of an individual who really has surrendered to that is humility, is the recognition of the responsibility for having made choices. And that's a very difficult pill to swallow. The ones that Jesus is admonishing have not swallowed that pill. They are claiming to already be past that point. And so Jesus is like, as he sometimes says, I don't know you, I never knew you. And we might go, well, that sounds kind of harsh. When you understand the attitude that is necessary for a human being to receive the love of God, it's very simple. If we are pretending that we are there and yet we are still perpetuating that old system of oppression, then that is something that God will not ignore. Now, in our community, there's varying degrees of commitment to wanting to live in this atmosphere of love and light. Those who have really surrendered and say, yes, I'll do anything, don't be surprised if you are like a blind person who is now in a new environment where you're bumping into everything. And don't be surprised if part of you seeks to find fault with Christ or the path or with the priest, because it is a difficult adjustment to separate yourself from this oppressive system that we live in, that is about power and fear, and truly surrender to a place that is of love and light. And many of the people who you love have not made the decision to transition into this other environment. And when you are really, really committed to it, you say, I must be in that new environment regardless of anything else. Then some of these people will fade from your life. And that's scary, I understand that. But when people hear about the kingdom of God and the kingdom of heaven and the possibility of living in a state of just relaxation and love and all the good stuff that really awaits, we want that. But we don't really realize that you have to be weaned off of the system that you grew up within. And that some of the people you love are not ready to be weaned off of it because it works for them. And other people actually see you as the enemy for having abandoned the system that they have so invested in. So who is it that has that kind of courage, that is willing to be blind and bump around in this new atmosphere without too much kicking and screaming? Some kicking and screaming is hard to avoid, because we're adults and it's a little embarrassing to find ourselves really uncertain about how to live. You know, in those prison societies, there's constantly a desire to try to get away with stuff. You know, they figure out ways to smuggle in drugs so that they can at least have some sort of respite from the misery of being locked up. And anything is okay as long as it's hidden from the man. And that same attitude is very prevalent in society. How many people are willing to cheat on taxes or not pay the proper amount because stick it to the man? There's an energy of like, it's us against them. In this environment of love and light that you are being called into, there is no more of that. The authority is true. The authority is love. But we're all a little bit used to being nervous about the authority. And we're all a little bit forgiving in terms of, well, this maybe is okay, because I can kind of get away with that, right? We're used to living as though the authority does not have our best interest in mind. And so, it's a big adjustment to surrendering to a real authority of love. Most of us don't even believe such a thing exists, not in the way that you will find out. We want it to be there. We want God to be the loving authority. But it's so hard to undo the conditioning of the authorities. Maybe you had parents that were not good authorities. Maybe you had teachers that didn't really care that much. Maybe you have employers that are mostly driven by money and they don't care that much about you. And so most of us have adjusted to figure out ways to live underneath these authorities so that we are not red flagged, and we make sure that we get the things that we need and we want. This environment of love and light under the authority of God does not operate that way. We expose everything. So if somebody does something that is off, that's not snitching. You know, depending on the situation, and if you can get guidance, there's the commitment to speak the truth. Because the truth liberates. And people might go, well, you told on me. It's like, well, you did something weird. And I live in a system where, you know, I don't want that. I don't believe in letting that go because I'm going to take care of your ego or your emotions. If you did something weird, that damages the whole system. Now, I don't find I go out of my way to try to tell on people. That's not what the path is. But it's a good idea, or it's a good concept for people that can relate to this idea that you're not supposed to rat out people. I mean, it's just a really weird concept. It's like allowing for stuff that damages the whole system to perpetuate because of the ego of the other person or some sort of tribal mentality that you are selling them short, or I don't know what the word is. If you can hold yourself accountable at that level, you'll start to understand. This is why confession is really important in a community, because you can come forth and say, I separated from God in this way, and I want that burden lifted from me. I'm deeply remorseful for what I did. I was not able to prevent it. And the priest says, I have sincere remorse. And so I absolve you of that sin, and go and sin no more. And we try to continue that. But we don't recommend that you hide it as though speaking the truth is some sort of betrayal against I don't know what. So the message today really is you are being transported to an environment of love. And you should expect yourself to be uncomfortable and suspicious at times, because you don't really know what it means to live under an authority of love. I mean, when the things are given to you and your prayers are answered, it's fairly easy. But when God says, stay away from this because it's not good for you, or why are you doing this? That's totally out of accord with what you just said you wanted. And that intensity is a type of chastisement, and that can inflame your ego like nobody's business. We think as adults that nobody can tell us what to do. But in this environment, under God's authority, we ask to be told what to do because we're blind. We can't see it. And how liberating it'll be when you allow that to flow without that human ego resisting it, and that pride that wants you to already be, where these Pharisees say, we see, and they're like, you don't even want to see what Jesus is saying. And you have the audacity to claim that you already do see. When you listen to his apostles, and they're perpetually going like, I don't think we see, we don't know, enlighten us. And they're with him every day, and they're like the ones who see the most. But there's that humility of realizing that they don't know all the stuff they don't know. And so they're perpetually prepared to be humble. And that state of humility opens you to this tremendous grace. But you also have to be willing to stumble and bump into walls along the way. So consider if this is what you want. You know, briefly on my own experience, I feel calm. And to be in the presence of teachers, and teachers who were willing to initiate me, is just like, I don't know, it's like, this is what I'm supposed to do, and it's relaxing. And the world is difficult, yes, I understand. And people don't do the greatest things. We mistreat the animals and we mistreat the planet. But that is not your responsibility to correct all that. Really, right now, I'd like your responsibility to simply be learning how to be kind of awkward in this environment of love that is under the authority of God. And accept the awkwardness of being unsure of what that's like. And the occasional suspicion about, is this actually somebody's weird agenda on me, or is this really good for me? That's all part of how it goes until you really settle into that. And then you can see